numb and my heart's feeling heavy. Got anxiety in my blood, but I'm about to get ready to talk about it. And ashamed of the way that my mind works, straight flexing like a knee jerk. Got a lot of things on my mind, got a lot of things to pursue. Ain't no stigma gonna stop me from reaching my potential. What a nice view.
All right, well, let's do it on air. Alex, congratulations again. Cheers.
Thanks, buddy.
Anesthesiologist, soon to be doctor writer in a few months here. That's awesome, man. You already got the gray hair to kind of match.
I know.
You know, the salt and pepper.
Finally be justified.
It's beautiful. I want some salt and pepper now. I feel like the patients will take me a little more serious.
I was just with my brother in Colorado, actually, and the bummer is that now he looks younger than I do.
Really?
So, yeah.
And he's older than me.
Yes.
Yeah. By how
2
much?
or 3 years. So.
Were you salt and pepper before starting medical school?
Like there was a little bit like coming in.
So you
it got way worse when I got into med school. Exactly. This is what it does to you.
Well, yeah. So I guess for the listeners today is essentially the mental health experience of Match Week, and what that is like. And so I guess let's start where you're at now. And then we'll kind of like start with the whole beginning. So,
yeah.
So where'd you match? What are you going to be doing?
Yeah. So next year, with anesthesia is one of those specialties that you can still match advanced. And for the listeners who don't know what advanced is, it means that you can start, match into your anesthesia residency separate from your intern year. Your intern year is your first year out of medical school. And then with an advanced position in anesthesia, after you complete your intern year, then you go to your advanced position.
And there's a few residencies with that advanced setup, right? It's like anesthesia, derm, and is there a couple others?
Yeah, I guess the classic one is radiology. So I think primarily most radiology residencies are still advanced in that you will go either someplace else and do an intern year or do an intern year where your residency is and then start your PGY 2 years, so postgraduate year 2 in your radiology residency. So radiology, ophtho, derm, trying to think, PM&R, that's another one. But a lot of anesthesia is kind of moving away from this advanced setup and moving more and more towards categorical, which means that you don't do your intern year someplace separate. It's all built into one system. So I kind of had an interesting setup for my plan for rank lists when they came out. The program that I really enjoyed had offered an advanced position and a categorical position. Being DOs, a lot of the time we have to go more towards the eastern United States or the Midwest. The program that I got into was in the Midwest, and I ranked them number 1 with their advanced position number 1. Why did I do that? Hindsight's 20/20 on some of those things. But the main goal for me is my partner is in medical school right now. And I wanted to try...
The one and only Ashley Pennington. Yeah. The beautiful Ashley Pennington.
For me, obviously, wanted to try to stay in Washington an extra year and do my intern year here to try to spend as much time as I could with the wonderful Ashley Pennington.
Yeah.
And so when I set up my rank list, I only ranked one intern year, and that was here in Washington. And then I ranked, I think, 14 anesthesia programs in my main match. And the way you set up your rank order list is you'll rank stuff out, and for advanced positions, you'll have the option of having a supplemental list, and that's where you would rank your intern year programs. And I only ranked one. And I ranked my number 1 program as advanced, and then the intern year here in Washington as my number 1 for intern year, obviously. And so I kind of went into the match not really thinking that I had too much of a shot of going to my number 1 program. I thought it was kind of a reach.
Okay.
And so I guess that's the lead up to match week.
Well, so I guess let's pause. And I think the vast majority of the people that are going to be most interested in this podcast will be medical students. Yeah. But, hey, maybe not everybody. Mm-hmm. So what I really want to kind of allow the listeners and me, because I'm only a second-year med student. So, the first 2 years of medical school, you're in a classroom. It's not the most exciting. But you were a great faculty member. That was super fun. Year 3, it still seems rather standardized. You're out in the hospital, but everybody's kind of doing the same thing year 3. And then year 4, you're doing your audition rotations and electives, correct? Yeah. So leading up to match week, what was your experience like in year 4? And, doing audition rotations. And, what was the stress in that experience? So,
I had a little bit of a different experience. Our school has the fellow year, or scholar year. Where...
Yeah, you gotta accept it, man. Scholar. Yeah, stroke your beard when you say that. Scholar.
Much wiser. Excuse me. So, in between my 3rd and 4th year, I spent it... being a scholar in anatomy. That's how I got to know all of you so well. And it gave us a little bit more time to kind of figure out what we wanted to do, because after 3rd year, typically 3rd year in about January, you should know what you want to do and start planning out your 4th year, setting up audition rotations and those sorts of things. With the scholar year, it gave myself and my fellow scholars a little bit more time to kind of figure out exactly what we wanted to do. So going into my 4th year, I didn't know for sure if I wanted to do general surgery or if I wanted to do anesthesia. That was kind of a tough thing because my exposure to anesthesia was pretty minimal at that point. It's really kind of difficult to work, I guess, electives into your schedule 3rd year, because it's very structured with our school of what your cores you need to complete. I think they're getting a little bit more flexible with those sorts of things, but when I got there, my schedule was very laid out and I followed it. So I was very interested in general surgery, had a fabulous mentor in that, and I thought, well, I really, really enjoy this, but I kept hearing from lots of other people that, maybe that rotation wasn't exactly an exposure in, the grueling part of general surgery, because the preceptor I had was just so, I guess, positive all the time and really enjoyed his job and knew how to work, I guess, his personal life in with his professional life, which was really fabulous to see. And so, moving into my scholar year, still kind of on the fence about that whole thing. And then in January, I started to set up audition rotations, and I set up some auditions in anesthesia, and I set up some auditions in general surgery. So, hit the road probably about August or so, did my first anesthesia rotation. Anesthesia is it's a funny specialty because it draws kind of very laid back individuals. So you don't really get the classic somebody getting up in your face and pimping you and making you feel dumb and those sorts of things, because that's not really the
Is that more
MO.
stereotypical of surgery?
With my experience, yes. So, did a couple auditions in anesthesia. Anesthesia ones are typically 2 weeks, so you can work a lot more in. I guess the other thing is that in anesthesia, MDs don't do a lot of audition rotations. It's mostly more of a DO thing, and I think still kind of it seems as if it's more of a DO thing. It'd be nice if we had a MD medical student here to tell us their experience. But so mostly DO programs. I did some auditions at MD programs. I did some auditions in general surgery. Quickly learned that wasn't quite the specialty for me. It's a more of an intense personality than I think I had, because it's very much in your face, and I really enjoyed the SICU side of things, which That's more of the intensivist of critical care, which is very typically anesthesia driven in a lot of hospitals. So it was fitting that I enjoyed the anesthesia part when I was on those rotations. It's also really, really hard because, you're so far away from your family. You're so far away from your partners and,
and you gotta have like your game face on.
You do. And it's not like, you can just roll in because every day is potentially a job interview. You know? And you're traveling around. I drove everywhere. I would not recommend that. It's pretty hard on you. It's nice to have a car with you. But I think I probably could have made it work even without one or renting one for that matter. And I have a Toyota Tacoma pickup truck, so I don't think I saved that much because gasoline's pretty expensive. Ohio, it's not bad though. It's pretty cheap there.
Okay. Well, so from really August until when do you finish this sort of like audition time? Yeah,
so I went until I think December 9th or so.
Oh, okay.
But you'll also have to realize that, so you'll get your interview offers about, I don't know, second or third week in October was when they kind of hit pretty big for anesthesia, and you'll get a lot of them then, and you've kind of got to sneak them into your rotations. And most places that you're doing audition rotations at will be pretty understanding of that you need to go and do interviews, but I tried to keep it to like one per audition rotation.
Okay.
I had one rotation where that wasn't possible, and it was a 2-week rotation, and it made it really, really hard. I felt like I just wasn't there as much as I would have liked to been, and I'm sure it reflected kind of poorly on me for that matter. So always keep that in mind that like you've got to work interviews into this whole process too. So it's a delicate balance. And I don't know how that would go for other specialties. Typically, I guess towards the end I was on anesthesia rotations, and anesthesia is once again really, really understanding of that you've got to go and do interviews. So
what is this interview process like? At least, when I was applying to medical school, I applied to frickin', I don't know, 28, something like that. I maxed out my credit cards. It was awful. And of course it led, to, I became a medical school.
Well.
I was able to get in the first time I applied. I was extremely thankful. But looking back, I'm also like, man, I wasted a lot of money. Like, I wish I could have applied to less. Now, when you're doing these audition rotations, is it kind of, though, the same thinking? Like, hey, I might as well do as many as I can here? Or is there, like, a magic number?
So, I mean, I think I should have known better when it came to that, because I don't feel like I applied to enough audition rotations. Okay. I made it work, and it kind of filled out my schedule as I went along, but I don't know if I necessarily got auditions exactly where I would have preferred to be doing auditions.
Okay.
And where I matched, I didn't do an audition rotation, actually. So,
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So,
is that common?
I think in anesthesia, because MDs don't do really a large number of audition rotations, I think it's fairly common.
Okay.
But I'm definitely not. That's just I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know for sure on that one. But I think the majority of DOs who have matched in the past at, I guess, more competitive locations are typically doing auditions at those places, because it definitely does gives you a leg up. But I think if you how to say this the right way, if you feel as if you have a tough personality for people to deal with, you might want to try to taper your audition rotations to more of a minimum amount, because audition rotations can hurt you as well.
Oh, okay.
So it's exactly what you said. Every day is a interview. So
and it's got to be incredibly fatiguing, because you always have to be just the best.
Always trying to be on your A game. But one thing you need to realize is that these people want to see that you're a human being too. So I think being smart's great too, but to most of the residents there, they want to make sure you're cool and make sure you're
telling me I have a chance.
Logan, I have no concerns at all. But always take that into account when you go out on these audition rotations. Is like, be a human being. Like, it's nobody really wants to be there with a robot who's just reciting facts to them, right? Okay. Especially at 3:00 in the morning. Like, nobody wants to hang out with that person, right?
And are the audition rotations, is it like crazy work hours, or do you get a chance kind of to mingle with the residents and sort of see what they're like?
So surgery was definitely like that. And surgery, the expectation was that you were there every single day for 4 weeks straight. And you can
and like crazy hours.
Yeah, I mean, you can calculate the hours on that, but I mean, school's you're not supposed to go beyond 80 hours a week, right?
But yeah, quote, yeah.
I followed those rules. If anyone's from school listening, for anesthesia wise, once again, really laid back residency programs typically. So to them, you're not going to be an anesthesiologist by the end of it. I mean, you can do a few things, like you can put a tube in and like you can talk about meds and stuff, but the resident is going to be giving the meds. They're going to be right there with you with stuff. So pretty much you're just there to hang out and, you're going to shoot the shit with the resident, really try to learn about the city, make sure you want to be there, especially in anesthesia. Like, they want to make sure that that's, the place you want to be. Make sure you get along with everyone well. I mean, that's the main goal.
Now, I've heard, looking back on medical school interviews, they're very, it's only one day and it was very nerve-wracking. Mm-hmm. I've heard audition rotations and maybe even interviews are a little bit more friendly. Was that your experience?
Oh, totally. As you move into interviews, at least anesthesia-wise, it's very much like, okay, well, tell me about yourself. And that this is kind of where you should really have your kind of elevator speech down of just your background. And you're going to get 5 minutes to talk about yourself, okay? And then they're going to say, okay, what questions do you have for me? Okay. And so it's pretty much, you're going to guide the interview. There's very minimal anesthesia taught in medical school. Obviously, you learn the drugs, you learn the volatile gases and stuff like that. But
I just remember that ketamine can be used.
Yes.
My favorite part of anesthesia.
Very, very neat new drug right now, of a very, very old drug. But, that's typically how the interviews go, and they're very guided. And then, sometimes they'll have residents in kind of the waiting area, and you'll sit in there and you can talk to the residents. Typically there's a dinner beforehand. Okay. You can interact with the residents there, which is really, really nice because you can, get their take on things. And, you gotta understand what questions you can ask residents and what questions you can ask faculty, right? Like, don't go into your interview and ask the faculty how much you're going to get paid and how much vacation you're going to get. Those just aren't questions that are appropriate. Or, where do residents live? Those sorts of things. Like, those are all, those are appropriate resident questions. And, typically they'll tell you how much you're going to get paid and those sorts of, and it's pretty standard.
Well, you can look that up online.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of a stupid question
to ask. Don't ask questions of things that are easily looked up online. That's another kind of big red flag, because it shows that you really weren't even that interested to look them up online. So come into these interviews prepared, but don't come in and, I guess, be too prepared also. Be able to shoot it from the hip a little bit, be able to converse with people. I think that goes a really long way in terms of the way that they evaluate you, and know that you're going to get along well with the residents there. And that's the typical thing, is that once you're in there for an interview, they know your statistics. Like, that's great. It's I guess evaluation of fit is typically what they're trying to find.
Okay.
At least in terms of anesthesia. And as I went through the interview season, I did a few interviews for general surgery. I did, I think, 3 interviews for general surgery. And I just, as those interviews kind of progressed, I quickly learned that was just not the right field for me.
Okay.
And the feel of those interviews is far less laid back, and it's more of, they'll give you different scenarios. You'll have to triage patients, and just kind of, it's a lot more evaluating, less so of, you kind of guiding the interview. But
I've heard some, my friend, Travis, who you know very well, he's heard stories of surgery interviews that while you're getting asked questions, you're doing sutures.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate. That's
I never had that experience, but I definitely could see it happening.
Yeah.
But most of those were like multiple interviews or like large panel interviews where lots of people will ask you different questions or give you different scenarios and ask you to try to work through them and those sorts of things. So it was a little bit more grueling, but I guess that's something the field really values.
Okay. So you finished interview season when?
So I finished interview season, I think my last interview was like January 18th or 19th or so. So everything went a little bit later this year for anesthesia because, they've gotten so many more applicants. I think one place I did a rotation, the program director said that they typically get around 800 applications, and this year they got 1,200 applications.
Oh, wow.
So it's just been a monumental jump in popularity with the specialty becoming more popular for, I don't know for sure, but it's definitely become much more popular.
Yeah. Maybe for a lot, I feel we have a lot of students in our student body that are so interested in surgery, but anesthesia is like a nice
and that was kind of the word on kind of the trail is that it was a lot of people who were trying to get into surgery, and then anesthesia was their plan B. And so there were a lot more people applying to anesthesia. Whether or not that's true, I mean, you'll hear a lot of different things on the trail, and it's kind of cool though because you get to meet a lot of people from like all over the place, and like just kind of talk about your different backgrounds, which is kind of fun, and MD schools and the way they teach things, and then you'll meet like international grads too, which is kind of neat, and I guess American or U.S. citizen international grads. I met a fair amount of those, like people who did med school in Ireland and then were coming back to try to do residency here. I didn't meet too many people from the Caribbean, but some people from Australia who are U.S. citizens who went to Australia, did medical school, and then came back here.
Okay.
It's just kind of cool to see, at least listen to people's backgrounds and stuff. And like, I mean, you'll go into these dinners too, and like some people think that they're like competing in the dinners and stuff like that. I think that's just kind of lame.
Yeah.
it's like, we're all there to interview, and as much as it is like you're being interviewed, you're also kind of interviewing them. You're trying to learn about them too. So, once again, if you come in with that attitude that like you're gunning to impress everybody at this dinner, and that you're competing with your fellow applicants at this dinner, like that's just not an appropriate setting.
Yeah.
And people will rub you the wrong way, and that's true with any situation. But don't come in with that attitude, and residents will definitely see through that. And once again, you're just kind of making a red flag for yourself when you do that. It just makes you seem less like somebody they would want to hang out with.
Yeah.
So,
and for I guess the non-medical students out there listening, when you're in residency, I've gotten to know my medical students extremely well, but residency, it's such a smaller knit, and you're around them even more hours. It's like you got to be family for like 4 years. Wait, anesthesia is 4 years?
So anesthesia is 4, including the intern year. Yeah. So you do your intern year, and then you have your 3 years.
And how many residents will you be with?
So
in your class.
So the program I'm going to, it's 21 a year. So it's a sizable program. So and let's see, I think, but DO programs were much smaller. Like they were like 3 or 4.
Oh wow.
They're not nearly as big, but I'm going to MD program, so much bigger, and it's out in the Midwest.
So, okay, before we even get to match week, I know we're still 25 minutes before match week here. But, okay, because I feel like, and I don't know about other medical schools, but I feel I don't know the world that exists after boards.
Yeah.
So you finish interviews, and then, like, when do you have to submit your ranking?
So this sequence, I mean, granted, like, anyone who's out there, like, trying to plan this out as a second-year student, you don't need to know any of this stuff at that point. You know, like, think back to, like, when you were going into med school and, like, you were, like, trying to study before you got there. Do you recall, do you think that any of that was helpful, or any of the listeners out there think that that was actually helpful when you got to med school? Not, like, necessarily, like, prep classes, but, like, you know, like, I've heard of people, like, trying to get, like, their first aid before they even get into med school and are, like, studying
I have a good story for you. Yeah. So I was put on the wait list at a few programs, and so I was like, shit, like, what can I do? So I signed up to take online biochemistry through the University of New England, I remember. Okay, so I'm taking this course. I'm super into it. I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to prep for med school. I'm going to be so smart. Then I get the call from Pacific Northwest that I got in, and I just stopped trying. And I enjoyed my summer, and I am so happy that I did that. Yeah.
And I would say the exact same thing for, like, trying to prep your fourth year as a second year student who's studying for boards. Like, take it one step at a time. Like, that's... And enjoy those moments you have off. And now that you're in med school, aren't you grateful that you took that time before you were in med school to enjoy yourself?
Well, and it's very relevant to this podcast because I'm a firm believer in, like, mindfulness and staying in the moment. And, you know, it's really easy to get anxious about even boards, which I actually take 3 months from today, and anxious about, you know, this story that we're about to get into. But it's like I can't experience those emotions today. Like, I just have to focus on where I'm at now. And so I think that's kind of like the same thing you're saying.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, I guess as you progress through this, you'll become even more grateful for free time. And I think that's kind of the part of being a physician and moving into this lifestyle. And that's kind of the acceptance of that you don't have free time, right? And so when you do have free time, like, really cherish it with, you know, those people that you love, because it's so very important, at least to me, that I have those people in my life. Yeah. So, I mean, having my significant other there for me in, you know, these moments and what we're about to get into really was paramount and really helped me get through all these things. So make sure you make those, that when you have that free time, make that free time for those people. Don't make it for, you know, hypothetically studying for future situations. Like, understand that there's more important things in life than being the smartest person in the entire world. Because it is. I get that. That's hard for me to say as a type A personality individual. And I'm sure that you think about that too, is that it's always in the back of your head, right? You should be doing this, this, and this. But really enjoy those moments you have with those people you love. That's for sure.
Well, I kind of take a philosophy of, like, I used to be a big part of this support group down in Sacramento, and it was called Balance. And I've always kind of, like, tried to apply that to many aspects of my life. If I'm 100% a med student, and if you're 100% an anesthesiologist in a few months, you're going to lose your mind. And while, you know, you might only have 2%, 4% of free time, like, you need to honor that time and really take advantage of it. Okay, so going back, you submit your ranking when?
So, let's see. I'm trying to remember the exact date. But it should be somewhere in, like, February. I think it's February 20th.
Okay.
I don't hold my hand to a Bible on that one, but I think it's February 20th. So end of February. Yeah, you
and then you fart around for like 2 weeks before the match. That has to be nerve-wracking.
Some people get, like, really anxious about that time period. Once again, like, I probably should have been more anxious about that time period with the story I'm about to tell you, but, like, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, not knowing is better than knowing, at least for me in that situation. So I was just like, well, this is great. Like, I've done everything I can possibly do.
It's out of my hands.
It's out of my hands, so let's learn how to fly fish in the backyard. It's been very snowy in Yakima.
That is funny. I did see, I think, an Instagram story of you like practicing to fly fish.
So I need to learn how to fly fish. It's ridiculous, but
I don't know how much fly fishing you can do in Chicago.
No,
but one day. Yeah,
never know.
Okay, so those 2 weeks. It sounds like you had a healthier attitude than
I'm sure people will sit there and twiddle their fingers, but to me, I guess I'm a little bit older, so I mean, and I've been going at this now. This is my 5th year because I did that extra year for scholar year. So I mean, I know to cherish free time when you got it. So I was having a great time, and just kind of skiing and learn how to fly fish and those sorts of things. So, there you go. But I guess some people will sit there and nerve wrack over it.
Probably read like studentdoctor.net or whatever, some of those blogs just freaking out and stuff.
Well, of course, like, you'll look at statistics and stuff like that, but
I hate statistics.
Yeah? Come on.
I think they're stupid.
Well, you're a man of science, though. Can't you, try to put yourself in a category and
look at it this way. Every single pre-med advisor that I met essentially told me, don't tell people you have bipolar. And I was like, I flipped them the bird, and I just did it my way. Mm-hmm. So I believe in stats to a certain portion, but it's like, you are your own person. Yeah. And that's how I'm kind of advising actually a lot of my classmates, because we're, a lot of us second years are freaking out about boards right now. Mm-hmm. But I'm just like, okay, boards are only one aspect of your application. I get they're probably the most important. But, if you can't interview, they're not going to be interested. If the nurses don't like you, you're not going to get, it's like you have to be a multi-dimensional person.
I think that another thing that, if your ultimate goal should be to pass your board examination. That should be the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And, beyond that, I think the detriment of a medical student is to come into medical school saying, I'm going to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, and if I don't become that, I'm going to be nothing. I'm going to be a failure, or I'm not good enough, or I'm going to hate myself if I can't be that. And that shouldn't be your end goal, right? I mean, we all said what we had to say to get into med school, right? You said, you wanted to help people no matter what, and that was what was most important. I can guarantee you said that at some point or another, right? Now, you need to walk the walk with that. Like, if you don't score, in the range to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, you score in the range to be a fantastic
psychiatrist. Just say it. You won't hurt my feelings.
Psychiatry is getting more and more competitive.
That is true. Yeah.
Or in the range of family practices, typically, because it's such a wide range. Because I shouldn't even say that, because family practice also has the highest board scores. Also, if you ever look at the spread on things. So, but I mean, come into med school and take your boards with the acceptance that you do as well as you possibly can. I'm not taking back from that. Try as hard as you possibly can. But if you do not get the number that you want, don't feel as if it dictates your life fulfillment, because you're going to go and do third year, and I can guarantee you're not going to do what you walked into your third year thinking you wanted to be. I did not foresee myself going into anesthesia. I thought I was going to go into medicine, and that was the only route for me. And
really, you thought you were going to be an internist?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be an internist.
Okay, interesting.
And you know what? I went into third year, and that's the best part about third year. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you walk into third year saying that I'm only going to like these things, and I'm only going to try hard at this thing. You should try hard at everything. You should. Yeah. It's okay to not know things on those rotations too. The expectation is that you don't know things. You're a medical student, so go into those rotations with it being an experience and try to take as much as you can out of that experience.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that's really good advice. Okay, well now 33 minutes in,
man.
we finally get to match week here. I'll put a prelude at the beginning and be like, if you just want to hear about
fast
match week,
forward to minute 62,
sorry.
and then
me and Alex have shared too many rounds of golf where we can just go on for days talking. By the way, next Friday.
All right, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
All right.
Match week.
So match week rolls around.
Okay, so for the non-medical listeners and even medical students that don't know how this works, my understanding is you can email on Monday and then something happens on Friday.
Yeah.
So can you explain that?
Let's walk through this a little bit, okay? So on Monday you find out whether or not you matched, okay? And they will just say it's very binary. It's yes, no. And I guess not binary also because if you applied to advanced programs, they can tell you matched into one thing, but you didn't match into an intern year. Or, I guess those are the three possible things that you can do is yes, you matched, no, you didn't match, or yes, you matched into your advanced program, but you didn't match into your intern year or your preliminary program is what they call it. And that comes on Monday, okay? And then the reason why they don't tell you where on Monday is between Monday and Friday is when the SOAP occurs, which used to be called the Scramble. A lot of people still call it the Scramble, but it stands...
That's such a better name.
It is, but it explains what's occurring in Scramble, but more... SOAP stands for Supplemental Offer Acceptance Program. So the SOAP is when... people who are unmatched can apply for all those unfilled positions that were not filled during the match and try to get into one of those programs. And then Friday rolls around and they'll tell you where you're going to, okay?
And so, once again, just to kind of, for the non-medical people listening, and really me, but... It's like the match is essentially you rank your programs and then the programs rank their students and essentially it has to match up.
Yes. So I would, if anyone is, confused by me explaining this, which granted I would understand why you would be, the NRMP has fabulous videos that walks you through each of these processes. And they're all on their website. But yes, so you make your rank list and they'll make their rank list. But you're the candidate is the ultimate decider in regards to they follow the applicant's rank list. So they look at my rank list and they'll see Rush is number 1 on my list. And then they'll go to Rush's list, and then they'll say, oh, you're on Rush's list. Okay, you're at position 22. Okay, they have 21 spots. So if all 21 spots ahead of me are ranked high on other applicants' lists, let's say all other applicants ranked Rush number 1 of those first 21 spots they have, I no longer have a spot at Rush. And so then they go down my list, and they'll look at my second program on my list. And then they'll go to their list and see if I line up on their list.
Okay.
And that's how the match occurs. And that's what's occurring between February 20th and March 11th, which happened this year. Okay.
Okay.
And
so let's finally get into the deets.
Yeah.
So Monday morning rolls around. You get that email. You open it up. What do you see?
So I'm very private when I get very important information. I want to be alone and look at things. So I went off.
And wait, were you in You were
no
the lovely lady.
I was with my partner in Colorado. So it was you all's spring break. So we went down there get some skiing in, and we were in Vail, Colorado, actually, where my brother lives.
Okay.
And so I got the email, and I was pretty calm, I think, before I really found out. And I got the email, and prior to that, I kind of had in the back of my head, like, what happens, if I don't match? And of course, anyone in the application is or I guess anyone in the match is thinking about that, right? Everybody's walking through it. So I got the email, and it said, congratulations, you've matched. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. And then it said, unfortunately, you haven't matched into an intern year.
Okay.
So I had matched into my so I didn't know yet it was my first choice for anesthesia because I had 2 programs on my list that were advanced anesthesia programs. Okay. And all other the 14 were all categorical programs. So immediately at that point you have the, oh goodness, you know what I mean? Like it's quite the, I guess, the emotional experience because you never thought you would be in that position, even though you played it out in your mind. Yeah. Like, I mean, at least that's how I think is that I played it out in my mind, like, well, I would do this, well, I would do that, but you never really never really foresee myself being in that situation.
And it's like partially good, partially bad.
It is because, you know, and looking back at this, I can't even imagine the emotions that you would be going through if you didn't match at all. You know,
which happens.
Yes.
Which is the biggest bullshit of the medical education system. That we graduate more medical students than available positions. It's the dumbest thing in the world.
So we can definitely dive into that, and I'm more than willing to do another
at the end,
podcast. We'll do an epilogue of that. But, yes, so, I mean, I felt as if I was a very competitive applicant, which I'm sure anyone who enters the match would think that. And I did not foresee myself being in this situation. So at 9 a.m. you find out that, okay? And I found out I got into my top. So after you find that out, if you are matched to an advanced program, you can call up the NRMP, which is the governing body. I keep referencing that, but that's the governing body of the match is the NRMP. You can call them up and say, I matched to an advanced program. Can you tell me where I matched to? And they won't tell you where, but they'll tell you location-wise. So okay. I only listed 2 advanced programs, which means you're starting your PGY2 year.
Correct. Yeah.
And I listed them they're in 2 separate cities. So I knew one was in Chicago and one was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And they told me that I matched to a program in Chicago, which is very, very helpful for individuals trying to find an intern year. So at this point, you don't even have time to process that you are unmatched. And I think that's something that's really hard is that, you put your, I guess, everything you've had into this for the past 4 years, 5 years in my situation, probably longer than that, right? Because how many years did you try to get into med school? So, trying to think through what somebody would be feeling like if they had put their whole life into being a general surgeon or being a OB-GYN, or, being a family practice doctor, and they just found out they didn't match. So, thankfully, I had a little bit of a cushion that I found out that I had just matched into my number 1 program in anesthesia, but I didn't match into my intern year. It still felt pretty shitty,
yeah.
But I don't have much to stand on. Yeah, in terms of the way that I could be feeling.
One thing that I'm confused by your situation, and we'll get, I know we'll get it ends well, of course. But what if you weren't able to find an intern year? How does that work? Would you not be eligible then for your advanced?
Exactly. Yeah, you would not be eligible. You have to find an intern year, or you.
So you would have been screwed if you didn't.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Exactly. So let's go on.
Yeah. But if anyone ever finds themselves in that position, I have heard that if you talk to the advanced program you matched into, sometimes after the SOAP is over, after this is all over, they may be able to help you out with something, but don't hold me to that also.
Okay.
But that's
rumor on the street.
The
internet, you saw it on the internet. It might be true.
It might be true. Yeah. You hear a lot of things, and you'll hear a lot of things. But anyways, so this was at 9 a.m. At 10 a.m., you need to start submitting applications in the SOAP. To programs that are unfilled.
Like you said, no time to process. You just got to get to work.
You got to get to work. And
damn.
And at our school is wonderfully supportive. At least my experience was absolutely fantastic. And I had a game plan ready to go if this thing happened. Because, I'm a planner. That's how I am. I always want to know, what am I going to do if plan A does not work out? And that's maybe that's life experience. I don't know. I hope that smart, everyone would think through what they're going to do. And I would recommend that anyone who's going into the match knows what they're going to do if they do not match. And my game plan is apply to every transitional year you can possibly see available to you. So basically, if you don't match an intern year, you're only able to see what intern years are available in the SOAP. You don't get to see what OB-GYN positions are open, only the things that apply to you. So if you need an intern year, you can do an intern year in a transitional year, which is typically you rotate around to different things. It's a lot more broad. For anesthesia, it's more ideal because you can do more time in the ICU. Or you can do prelim medicine, which is very hard, but well-rounded education. Or you can do prelim surgery. Typically, the largest number of unfilled spots in the match are prelim surgical spots.
Okay.
They're very difficult. At least they're known to be very, very difficult because, you're trying, most of those individuals are trying to earn their way into the surgery program. So, they're doing a lot of grunt work, and
it's probably extremely cutthroat.
It's a really, really tough year for people. I know that. I've had friends that have gone through it, and I've heard that it's a very, very tough year. So my goal was to do a transitional year, and at 10 a.m. Basically the ARIS program, which is where you submit your applications for residency unto itself, opens back up, and you can apply on that to any open program that are listed in the SOAP. Okay. I know I'm using a lot of different words here, and you'll figure out what all these words mean as you move into it. But ARIS is the application service for the match. So this is how you apply to programs, and this is how you get your interviews, is through ARIS. Okay. So at 10 a.m. Everything opens up, and you can apply to stuff, and you get 45 applications, and that's it. And it's they don't charge you anything to submit those 45 applications. You can't do any more than that. So I had Ashley. She's looking up programs, and there were 35 unfilled transitional years, and then I applied to 10 additional prelim medicine years. And I had known that I was matched to Chicago, and at this point, I wasn't even able. This is Talk Mental Health with Logan Newton, so
it is, yeah.
So we should definitely be talking about the mental health component of this whole thing. I didn't even have time to really take in that. I just lost the opportunity to spend another year close to my partner, and that was pretty monumental in this process. And I don't think I even had the emotional capacity to really take that in that moment, because everything was so rapid fire. And it was just like, oh man, this means we're going to have to spend, a year apart.
Yeah. And,
if, anyone wants to be close to those that they love. And I mean, that was pretty, it was big in the aspect of things, but I wasn't really able to take it in. And I think Ashley kind of immediately was, she was actually able to process it. And I think that was kind of the hardest part of that moment is that we weren't emotionally on the same page with what was going on.
Yeah.
And the SOAP process, everybody talks about how grueling it is. And typically, you'll have people there to support you, and you're just on such different pages of what's going on in that moment. And I think that's really, really, that's hard for anyone who's going through it. And, a lot of these people just possibly found out that they're not going to be able to do what they've always dreamt of doing. And then, you're just trying to find whatever. So anyways, with this being such a stressful situation, ARIS was not operational this year. So it was just gruelingly slow. So, you're supposed to get everything submitted.
So meaning the website just like shit the bed?
So Eris crashed. I actually wrote this down. Let's see. I think it crashed roughly 4 or 5 times.
Jeez.
So I was trying to submit stuff and I'm clicking submit and it won't submit. Or, you try to go to the next page and look at something and it takes 5 minutes for something to load. I mean, you only have 2 hours to submit 45 applications. That's a lot of applications.
Oh, wow.
So thankfully enough, you make sure you have everything loaded into Eris before, this all occurs. But I mean, with how the program was running, like that wasn't even possible. And the NRMP took that into account, so they delayed. So after those 2 hours, why you have 2 hours is that then the program directors can get in there and look at what applications have been submitted to them. And so at that point, because Eris was running so slow and nobody was really able to submit things, the NRMP said, okay, we'll delay this an hour. Okay. And so thankfully enough, that was helpful for me because I was able to get everything in. At least click submit and it said, okay, we've gotten these. So anyway, so then I go in and start looking at documents to make sure they've been totally transferred to the programs. And the documents weren't even transferring to the programs.
Oh, wow.
So, these may seem like, trivial things, but if you can't get the information to, possible intern years in my case, or possible programs for other individuals, like there's no hope of them calling you and entering you because they can't even look at your stuff. So I called up Eris at this point because they try to not get you to call Eris because they know they're just going to have such an abundance of phone calls. So you're not, at least when I tried to call, it said due to high call volume, the line is not operational. So I called them a few times, and that's what it said, which is just like, come on, I got to get these through to somebody. And so finally, I got on hold. I waited on hold for, I don't know, approximately, I think, let's see, I wrote down the exact time. 1 hour and 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I finally got through to somebody, and they said, "Oh yeah, they'll go through. It doesn't quite show on there." I think that Eris kind of knew this was not going well.
Yeah.
Like they definitely understood that things were not working properly.
Yeah.
And everybody's calling in trying to say, "Hey, my documents aren't even transferring, or I can't even submit applications." And thankfully enough, they took account of this situation and they said, okay, well, no program directors are going to be able to look at anything today.
Okay.
So they took the website down because it was running so slow. And they said, we'll let you know tomorrow at 6 a.m. my time. It was 8 a.m. East Coast time, what we were going to do. And so, of course, all of us woke up again at 6 a.m. in the morning, if you could really sleep after everything had gone through. And it said, okay, we're going to open up Eris for 2 more hours this morning and everybody can submit their applications. So I made sure I got everything good. Still, a whole bunch of my documents hadn't transferred. Called Eris again, sat on hold for an hour and a half. And they finally got on the line and they said, make sure you check again, beforehand. And I said, it takes an hour and a half to get into you guys, like in another hour and a half, program directors are going to be able to get in to see this. Can somebody follow up with me, or is there a direct line that I can get through? They told me that they would email me. It's kind of funny. I got emails on Thursday of the week for these things. So customer service was a real issue this year. And I mean, my whole goal here is definitely not to drag Eris through the mud. It was just, I mean, they know that this year was just, it was so trying for all of us of how difficult this was to make this program work. And I can guarantee they didn't want this to occur. And I'm very hopeful that this will bring about major changes in the way that they've built their infrastructure there at Eris, because this was, it just was not acceptable. And so anyways, at, I believe, 10 a.m. 10 a.m. my time, 12 p.m. The East Coast time. They were supposed to open it up to program directors. And why this schedule is so well held is that the SOAP is supposed to occur on Wednesday, and we're into Wednesday now. And I don't know when they made the decision. I think it was on Wednesday that they were going to delay the SOAP, which is when programs actually make offers to applicants.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they had changed it, I believe on Wednesday, but we'll get to that. So anyway, so they opened it up again, and you could apply again on that morning, and then it was supposed to open up to program directors. So then program directors tried to get on when the designated time was, and program directors weren't able to even make ARIS work. So they got in there. And program directors were, trying to contact ARIS and say, hey, we can't download anything. And there's a lot of very distinct rules of the match in that you're not allowed to contact them. They're not allowed to contact you until at least they review your application.
So you can't email your stuff to them, essentially.
No. Yeah. Everything needs to go through ARIS, which rightfully so, you don't want anyone to have unfair advantages in this whole entire process. I mean, it's stressful enough. And so, program directors weren't able to look at anything. And so then they take down ARIS and they say, oh, no, we're going to take it down again. It's not working. And, then a couple of minutes later, they tried, or I guess probably about an hour later, they tried to open up ARIS again to program directors. Didn't work again. And at this point, or I guess earlier in the day, ARIS stopped informing applicants via email what was occurring.
Yeah.
And my partner actually got on Twitter and found out that ARIS was notifying people via Twitter. And that was
in Trump's America. This is what the world has come to now.
This is how it goes down.
Email is garbage. Twitter is the new 140 characters way.
And I mean, I get that Twitter's a very effective way to informing individuals, but you need to recognize that a lot of these people are, well, not a lot, but some of these people are international medical grads. They may not know that Twitter is used for regular correspondence in the political world we live in at this point. But I think that was highly inappropriate to only notify people via Twitter that they're taking down ARIS or they're putting ARIS back up. I'm obviously not a program director, so maybe they were sending emails to program directors, but applicants were not told that ARIS was continually being taken down, put back up, taken down, put back up. I just realized my timeline's a little off. So this was Tuesday, actually. This was Tuesday. So Monday is when program directors were supposed to initially get access to applicants' files, but Tuesday was when they were trying to, and then the SOAP was supposed to occur Wednesday. That's why my timeline isn't quite where I am. Sorry about that.
Well, so when, I guess, did finally program directors be able to download? When did you start talking to program directors about interviews and stuff?
So
where you have some funny interview stories?
On Tuesday, I know this is a lot of just kind of banter around of ARIS down, ARIS up, ARIS down, ARIS up. So on Tuesday,
but it seems, you're already going through such a mental health taxing time, and then just to make it even, throw gasoline on the fire.
It's like
Jesus!
We're so dependent on technology. It's like when technology doesn't work, we're just up shit creek a little bit.
Yeah.
So on Tuesday, they had to pull it back down again, and no program directors had access to it. And then finally on Wednesday, they got it up to enough of a level for program directors to take a look at stuff. And what happens is you just start getting phone calls, and it's, I had one place that did a Skype interview with me, but most individuals will just call you on the phone, and and it's like rapid fire, like a 20-minute, just kind of interview of, what you've been going through on the interview trail, but a little bit different though. In the regards that, they're telling you more about the program and where they're located in the area you're in. And then you're supposed to ask them questions as well. And it's so...
Well, that has to be challenging because you don't have an opportunity to really research the programs that are calling
No,
you, right?
none whatsoever. And, you'll look up like 3 or 4, but, or I don't know, maybe, those individuals who are out there staying up all night looking at all 45 programs and have them memorized. But I did not have them all memorized. I had my top choices memorized, and I sure hope they called me. And you'll get phone calls while you're on the phone with other people, and then you'll get off the phone and they haven't left a message, and you try to call them back and you can't get a hold of them.
Oh,
like
geez.
It's just like, it's so rapid fire of, and you get questions about like, well, why didn't you match? What occurred? Tell me about your red flags, those sorts of things. Because I'm sure a lot of people will have a red flag or two in their file, and they'll really hit on those sorts of things. I got questions a lot about, well, why did you only rank 1 intern in your program? What were you thinking? And it's hard to explain those situations where I was trying to stay close to my partner. That was what was really important to me. I didn't foresee matching into my first choice program. I felt as if it was a reach. So prepare yourself for those questions when you're in the SOAP, and is that you're going to get those kind of questions. And then also it's different in the regard that, like, in interview season, I wanted to be as straightforward as possible, and I would never commit to going to a place. And they always say that, like, you never want to lie to somebody. But in the SOAP, like, it's basically like you need them to make an offer to you. And if they have 6 positions available, they can only make 6 offers. So truly, you will go anywhere at that point, right? Because I needed an intern year. And I didn't quite clue into that until somebody said that to me. Like, you need to tell them that you will go there if they make an offer to you. And I kind of came into it more of with the interview mindset of like, oh, well, that's great. Wow, that's really interesting. Like, that sounds like a really great program that I has a lot of things that I'm interested in. But I really didn't make that commitment over the phone with a lot of things, which I would, anyone else who finds themselves in a similar situation, you need to be selling yourself in that you will go there 100% if they make an offer to you. Yeah. Because you will. And that is the situation that you will.
And we kind of talked about it earlier. Like, if you didn't get that intern year, you're screwed,
And these people who find themselves in this situation, as I was, you need to be prepared for that. And as a graduating medical student, and going into the match, be prepared that you may have to go to a location that you don't want to go to. And you get phone calls from places that you really, I don't know very much about Arkansas. I got 2 phone calls from Arkansas. Okay. And, I'm like Googling where on the map they are, and, they're explaining it to me. And you'll get like phone calls, and people will say their names really fast, and you're trying to like hear them. Yeah. And it's a terrible process. It's really, really difficult. And so I went all day Wednesday getting phone calls. So on Tuesday, they had decided that they were going to push the SOAP back to Thursday and only do 2 rounds of the SOAP. They customarily do 3 rounds of the SOAP. Okay. All right. And thankfully for me, I had a number 1 TY that I saw online that was not filled. It was in Chicago. It was with a program that I had done a audition rotation with. So I knew the program very well. Ironically, they were my second choice for anesthesia. Oh, okay. Their anesthesia program. So I knew the hospital extremely well, and I was just like crossing my fingers that they called me. Thankfully enough, they did call me on Wednesday morning, and I about jumped out of my chair when I heard that they called me. And, I'm sure the program director could hear my demeanor on the phone, that I was just like, I was ecstatic that they had called me. And I was immediately asking them questions. I don't even think I did my elevator speech for them. And, the program director was just like,
you don't even have to pay me.
It's kind of, when you're in that situation, and you actually hear from a program that you circled, I think many people would feel that same way of just like, oh my goodness, thank God you called me. I want to tell you about myself, and like have that speech ready to go for everybody that calls you, though, for that matter. And I think that that's something I could have done better, is that you're so, I guess, melancholy from what you've just gone through. And you're like, I was 2 days in at this point. Eris doesn't work. Program directors can't see anything. I'm going to be spending a year away from my partner that I plan to be next to them. It's just such, it weighs down on you, and you're not sleeping through this whole entire process either. And, these programs are calling you and calling you and calling you, and you're doing, 10 interviews. By the time you get to the 10th interview, you're just tired. And I stayed in regular contact with my coordinator in Spokane, and she kept walking me through stuff and talking me through stuff and being like, okay, you sound less peppy than you did earlier. You need to pep up. Like, you got to get a position here. And like, anyone in that situation is like, I'm tired. Do I have to keep doing these? So I had 10 phone interviews. Why do I need to keep taking these things? You need to take as many as you possibly can. Numbers are in your favor. I know statistics are not your favorite thing, but the higher number of interviews that you do, the stronger the chances that you're going to get an offer. So walk into the SOAP, I guess, ready to be exhausted, like you've never been exhausted before. Mentally, physically, emotionally. It's going to hit on everything.
You're not in a position to be picky.
You're not at all. Yeah. And I hate the saying beggars can't be choosers, but this is kind of one of those situations that you've got to accept that as much as you don't want to, be someplace that you're not familiar with, you're going to have to accept that. Yeah. And I couldn't have asked for a better, opportunity that was presented to me during the SOAP, in that the city where I matched to my advanced program had called me from a program that I knew was a quality program. And but still, like, after you had gone through the email process of Monday, finding out that nothing was a guarantee, and you walk into SOAP morning. So SOAP morning was on Thursday. Thursday was when we finally had the chance to see what our offers were. Even though you talk to programs and they say, hey, we're going to give you an offer, you still kind of like, I don't really know. We'll see how this plays out. And thankfully enough, on Thursday morning, I got an offer from a program in Chicago, like I described earlier, and immediately accepted it. So you're offered positions. It's not, and you'll see all the programs that offer you a position, and you can select which one you're going to, and that's a binding contract at that point. So Thursday was a massive relief.
So what was that? What was that like when you finally got that good news?
So I'm gonna be honest with you. You can ask my partner how often I cry. I got up. Nobody else was awake, and it was at 7 a.m. when the SOAP occurred. Okay. And I bawled my eyes out.
Yeah, happy tears.
Yeah. But I don't even know. I don't even know if they were exactly happy tears, but just exhaustion tears from the experience.
It's almost like you experienced probably every emotion that you could in that span of 4 days. Exactly.
And it was such a relief, but it was also, I had never foreseen myself being in that situation. Yeah. And it was all I could do at that point. Like, I was just finished. I hadn't slept in days. Ashley had a really tough time going through that process as well. I hope she'll forgive me for bringing this up on the podcast. But we spent a lot of whenever we had a moment to just kind of talk about how, moving into next year was going to go for us. And, thankfully enough, she, as always, was saying that she would be there for me as she was through this entire process. So, I couldn't ask for a better partner to go through this entire thing with.
Now, do you know how many students were also going through the SOAP with you that week?
I don't know for sure. All these statistics will come out, and you can look at all those things on the NRMP website. And I think it'll be interesting to see what DO students went through this process, because, this is, we didn't even say that at the start, but the DO residencies have merged with the MD residencies to only have one governing body.
But not yet, right?
So there's a few programs left this year who are still in the old DO match, but the majority of them now are all in the MD match.
Because next year is like the first official year,
yes,
right? Okay.
So there's only a couple left anymore. And I think it'll be interesting to see how this whole process played out for DOs. I guess that's a big question in the DO world is how is this going to affect all of us? Because most, for our listeners who aren't medical students, in the past, it was a very, a separate world of DOs did their residency training with DO programs and MDs did theirs with MDs. Now, the world has become much more intermixed, and we're only going to have one governing body moving forward over all residencies, which is for the best. It really will be for the best, but it's complicated a lot of things, and we'll see what the future holds with that. Mm-hmm. So I guess the big concern for DOs is that we're not getting an equal shake to MDs in this process. So it'll be interesting to see how many DOs went unmatched in the match.
So now speaking, I guess, because I feel like the first 2 years of medical school, you're just kind of in the thick of the weeds.
Yeah.
You're going through tests every freaking day, banging your head against the wall, trying to learn anatomy from the anatomy scholars. But then, after this, it's like, I feel like now once I finish boards, it's like, okay, I need to start almost networking, going to conferences. Then, of course, I'm into the interviews and the sub-Is like you. So what advice, essentially, would you give me and other second-year, specifically osteopathic medical students on how you wish you would have done this process differently?
Okay. So from a second-year perspective, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I guess let's just start with, I think the big debate in my second year class, you probably don't go an hour without hearing this. Are you taking COMLEX or are you taking COMLEX and USMLE? And for the listeners, that's the DO test versus the MD test. Are you going to take both or are you just going to take one?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is a big debate in the world we're living in right now. And so DOs, we all got into DO schools. A lot of us for a varying amount of reasons for why they went the DO path. But the world we live in is that the COMLEX is not as well respected as the USMLE. Mm-hmm. So that's what is driving people to take the USMLE is that with one governing body over all residencies, what test do they want to look at? And your board score, it dictates, how you're evaluated and if you get an interview. And so the world as it is right now is that the USMLE is superior to the COMLEX. We have to take the COMLEX no matter what. You have to take it. But will it hurt you to take the USMLE is another question that you need to ask, because will it benefit you to take the USMLE? Yes, if you pass the USMLE and you do fabulously. Can it hurt you if you take the USMLE and you fail it? Yes, it certainly can. And you were taught to pass the COMLEX. You were not taught to pass the USMLE. And that's another aspect is that DO training is still different from MD training. So we're in Washington. I did my clinical training in Spokane. So we spend a lot of time with University of Washington students there. Their schedule is set up very differently than ours is, in that they finish in, I don't know for sure. We need a UW student here to tell you that. But they finish much earlier than we do second year. So they have more time to dedicate to taking their board examination, which, I mean, more time would be great for you right now to be studying for boards. Now, should you take USMLE if you're a DO student? Are you in the top, 20% of your class? If you're not, USMLE is a very different test than the COMLEX. You need to ask yourself, if I fail, do I have a high possibility of failing this? Like, do some evaluation tests. They're definitely out there. The NBME has them on their website. If you can't pass those prior to taking your USMLE, you should not take your USMLE. So, take all those factors into, your decision. But know that you are trained well to take the COMLEX. At least our school trains you extremely well to take the COMLEX. Know that you are not trained specifically to take the USMLE. It's a harder test. I did not take my USMLE. Do I regret not taking my USMLE? Yes, I do.
Really? Okay.
I know that I did not get interviews at programs because I specifically did not have a USMLE score.
Oh, no.
So, I thought, and then you'll say, well, if I decide I need it later on, I'll go back and take it. You're never going to be as sharp as you are in terms of what is on the USMLE and what is on the COMLEX after your second year of medical school.
Yeah.
So going back, you're not going to have as high of a score. And, a lot of people will go and they'll take the test and, it can hurt them. So always take those into account.
And so I guess, just so the listeners kind of understand, I remember we got an email from our dean that, in theory, the national boards or national somebody, whoever, I don't know, the dean sent this, is that the USMLE and COMLEX are supposed to be viewed as equal. But then even the dean kind of alluded to, we don't know how this is going to really be in practice and how residencies directors are going to view this. And I think, I'm kind of theorizing and you have a better understanding than I do, but residency directors have been viewing the USMLE for years and maybe not had as many COMLEX applications. They don't know how to interpret those scores.
Yeah, and it's more specifically in the Western United States. I would say that COMLEX is far less accepted in the Western United States as compared to the Midwest and the Eastern United States. I'd say the West and the South specifically are far less, willing to accept the COMLEX rather than a USMLE.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of honestly easy, though, to kind of say the top 25% students in your class are the most appropriate to take USMLE.
Yeah. It's a convenient statistic, isn't it? Yeah, the smartest people in the class are going to do well.
Like, no shit. Like, they're the whiz kids. Speaking from someone who is most definitely in the bottom 25%, probably bottom 5%. I go...
In what regard, though? I mean, we can dive into that as well.
Okay, let's just say grades. in ability to pick the right answer.
In personal skills and likelihood to succeed in third year, I would argue that you are in the top 10%.
Well, thank you.
Know your strengths, though, right?
My strength is podcasting. being an easy person to talk to, which is essentially very convenient for psychiatry. But now, I feel like it's also very determinant on, if you want to go into surgery. It seems like everyone who wants to go into surgery, you're taking USMLE or some other...
Which is kind of funny, too, because the I guess the cruel reality is that not that many DOs are matching into MD surgery programs. the majority of them are matching into traditionally DO surgery programs.
Even with USMLE score?
Even with the USMLE. Because this is another factor you need to determine here is that how accepting is your specialty. Okay, so your desired specialty is psychiatry, let's say. You need to go and look at okay, so let's say your goal is to get into the top 10 psychiatry programs in the United States. I can guarantee their MD programs more than likely, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Certainly.
So you need to go on there and you need to look at their residency list and see if they have any DOs in their residency. If they don't have any DOs, I don't want to say that they'll never accept a DO, but realize that once again, the likelihood of you matching into that program is fairly low, right? Mm-hmm. Because tradition in these places is very well rooted, and that those are the type of students that they accept. So, if you go and you look at like the top 10 surgery programs, and I would highly recommend anyone who in their third year, Doximity has a fabulous evaluation now of programs ranked on their evaluation from residents, from program directors, and what is their standing throughout the United States on their I guess full evaluation from those factors. And you can look and see what the programs ranked are. You can look and see if they've ever taken a DO. So a lot of the surgical programs and the surgical specialties are well known to not be open to DOs at this point in time. So even if you do take your USMLE and you're an osteopath, are you necessarily going to get into those programs? I mean, it's possible. Anything is possible, right? Mm-hmm. But you need to understand that you would be one of the very first DOs moving into that program. So is it a guarantee that you're going to get an interview even if you take your USMLE and you score a 260 and I don't know, you've cured cancer and done everything else in the world? Yeah. No, it's not. The likelihood of you getting into a program that has never accepted a DO in the past is not particularly high. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, these are all things you need to weigh. And most of the surgical specialties, or I guess surgery programs that have accepted DOs are DO programs. So
yeah. And I guess kind of the dilemma that I hear most of us students going through, and second year students that is, and myself, it's like, okay, what's the worth of, if I choose to take USMLE, I certainly only want to take it if I'm capable of passing. But I know taking it is going to sacrifice my USMLE score. So is it worth having 2 lower passing scores or 1 only COMLEX score that is a little bit higher? It's this weird dilemma. What are your thoughts on that?
So that's a tough call. Like, that's a really tough call, because I know individuals who had lower COMLEX scores than I did and took their USMLE and got interviews that I did not get. You know? Wow. So, it all depends on the specialty, but I know, anesthesia, you typically, you score okay on your USMLE, they'll probably interview you. And if you're an interesting enough candidate, they'll interview you. Great programs will do that. Mm-hmm. So know that, and I've heard that a weak USMLE score is better than no USMLE score. So, is that stronger than a high COMLEX score? A weak USMLE score and a mediocre COMLEX score?
Yeah. Not to say that I could get a high COMLEX score, considering there's probably a certain portion of cranial questions on there, which I will just hold my tongue at. But yes, well, okay, now moving away from just purely boards.
You can turn this into like 6 podcasts at this point.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What else would you want to do differently? What advice would you give that just, hey, looking back in retrospect, I wish I just approached things differently outside of just boards?
Outside of just boards, I would say your letters of recommendation are kind of a big deal. Because even though, they say, who really reads those things? Places read those things. Get a mentor. Get somebody who, especially in third year, because, gosh, a mentor makes your life so much better. It really does. Because they'll tell you, like, they'll break down all these things that I've just sat here and blabbered on about for the past 2 hours. They'll walk you through these things, especially like osteopaths. Find yourself an osteopathic mentor who's the type of surgeon or anesthesiologist that you want to be, because they've walked that road before. And get them to write you a killer freaking letter, because it really helps. And also, when I just walked you through the whole SOAP process with, saying as if I was the only one going through this process, I had so many people in my corner helping me through this. And my mentors were helping me through this. They were there saying, you need me to talk to anybody? And after, all these places called you, then you can have your corner go and recommend you to places as well. And they called places for me and helped me out. So I cannot... Okay, so I was a shut-in my first 2 years of med school. All I did was stay home and study. And then the third year, I really got out there and tried to get to know people. And networking is key third year. Like,
oh, really?
That's very important to getting good letters. Like, make an effort to, help your, if your mentor says, hey, I'm moving, like, go help him move or help her move. Like, be accessible, be helpful, be a member of your community. It will matter. All these things matter. And
did you attend many conferences over the course of third or fourth year?
I did not, and I would highly recommend. So, I mean, I also, once again, I thought, well, what good is that going to do me to go to a conference? I'm not an anesthesiologist. Like, what am I going to get out of this? I know many individuals who went to the ASA conference, which is the main governing body over anesthesia in the country, and they got lots of interviews just from going to that conference. Wow. So I would highly recommend that you go to your conference, the main governing conference of your specialty that you're applying to, before you submit your applications for residency. It can't hurt you. They typically have like a residency mix and mingle night where you can go and meet program directors. And I know people who went and talked to program directors and it got them interviews. It helps.
Yeah. It definitely makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about now? Okay, so networking, we've talked about boards. What about now, like, the application process? You kind of alluded to, do you wish you put more selections? Do you wish you did more sub-Is or interviews? Or
I feel like I did a fair amount. I think that 14 was more than enough for anesthesia.
Is that more than average-ish, or is that about average?
So this year, supposedly, it was, once again, these are all like road suggestions or student doctor network suggestions of that supposedly 100% match rate was going to be 12 ranks on your list. So, I mean, it only takes one, right?
Yeah.
So, even if you find yourself only getting one interview, like, blow that interview out of the water. Mm-hmm. It sure makes you feel a lot better if you've got, 10 or 12 interviews to go to, but all these things are expensive too. We're poor medical students. So, in terms of my application, or, if I would have, should have ranked things differently, hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah.
It's the world I'm living in now. I'm going to Chicago. I'm delighted to be going to Chicago. I'm going to work on how to say Chicago appropriately.
Yeah, Chicago. Get some deep dish pizza. No, dude. Well, I think that's almost a good place. We're at almost 90 minutes here. I think that's a good spot to...
Good point to cut me off.
Yeah, we could keep going another 90, but...
I apologize to everyone that I blabbered for this long.
No, dude. I think it was good. We'll, I'll put maybe a little tune in there, like, hey, fast forward to 30 minutes if you purely want to hear about Matt. Next Friday, post... psych test, me and Richard are taking you out for a round of golf.
That sounds good to me.
Congrats again.
Thank you.
Huge accomplishment.
Appreciate
Anesthesia, for the listeners who don't know, anesthesia is very competitive, very, very competitive. So it's really cool that you were able to get into a prestigious program, a great city. I'm excited for you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Logan.
Well, cool, man. Let's call it a day.
All right.
And that concludes Season 1 of Talk Mental Health with Logan Noon. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in over this past about 10 months or so. Why I'm taking a little hiatus from the podcast is I need to prepare for my board exam. It's an 8-hour-long exam, arguably the most important test of medical school. It really kind of determines how serious residencies take you, essentially. So I essentially need to put my 100% into it. So I will be taking a break from podcasting. Be sure, though, that I am definitely coming back after this Step 1 test exam. So come July 2019, I'll be producing episodes again. Please be in contact with me for any criticisms of the podcast, suggestions, guests you might want to have me interview. You guys can reach me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Just search Logan Noon. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Logan Noon. Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This experience of podcasting has been so gratifying. I've been really impressed with how many people have been tuning in, and I've really, really enjoyed providing a platform for people to share their stories and experiences about mental health. Hope you guys are having a great day, and thanks again.